Hi guys, welcome back to my layout. So I figured it's about time for another layout update, being that my last one was almost a month ago now. I've got a lot accomplished benchwork wise, but unfortunately I did not document it as well as I did my last layout update. Reason being is I just recently finished all of my semester finals here, so I've been really busy studying for those and keeping on top of my classes before the semester ends. And being that it's a new year, all the family members and distant family are trying to get back together again, so it's been very busy in between family and school, so it hasn't left me with a lot of time to get up into the room and work on the layout itself. But like I said, I have got a lot done, most of which was just completed this past weekend, so I think it was January 23rd and 24th. So let's get to that, and then I also have to show you my upper level track plan that I just recently completed as well. So I'll go ahead and walk you through what I got accomplished over the past month, and then we'll take a look at the track plan. So let's get to it. Alright, so right after the last layout update, I went ahead and got some more supplies, and I framed up this section in here, so that little cove in the wall I call it. What I did is I put vertical supports all the way around, just like I did on the wall, of the whole length of the wall and around the room. And I built the framework to the dimensions of that cove, and then basically this section in the back here is actually floating above the bay at the bottom of the cove, which is actually only 2 feet above the floor here. So I had to make it float because it would be too low otherwise. Then I went ahead and I built the section across the front here, which is where the intermodal staging begins. And then I went ahead and started to frame up the wall, and I'll reposition the camera so I can give you guys a better angle here. So after I framed up the benchwork I just finished showing you, I went ahead and framed up the wall that goes down the center there, and that is just over 10 feet long and it's 5.5 feet tall. And the way I did that is just a simple, make sure everything was square, and screwed everything together and stood it up. I screwed it into the floor and wall, and it was okay. The wood I used was just a little bit warped, so it did lean a little bit to one side, but after I started adding on the later sections of the wall, it all sort of fell in place and everything became nice and solid, and everything was level. So after that wall, I framed up the section on the other side of the wall there, which is the start of the grade up to the second level. And after I framed that up, I framed this section in the front here, which is where the town will be. And I'll go ahead and I'll show you what I did just this past weekend. And I got quite a lot done, so stay tuned. So this past weekend, this is what I managed to accomplish. I framed up the entire rest of the wall, which was the remaining 20 feet or so. And I also framed up the yard section. And I made the yard section in three sections. And I made them so they're more or less modular. Because if and when I ever have to move parts of this layout, I wanted to take the yard especially. Main reason for that is it's going to require the most amount of wiring, and it's going to have the most amount of tracks on it, which to get the yard running very smoothly and everything, it's going to take quite a bit of work. So I figured it'd probably be a shame if I left the part of the layout that would take the most work to get it running smoothly. Anyhow, I also built the legs underneath the yard. I actually built 4 different legs, just because with those legs in there now, the straight section of wall that goes all the way the length of the room is now it's pretty solid. I still have to add some supports that go into the ground because it is a little bit shaky still. But those legs, being that they're screwed into the wall and into the floor and into the yard module sections, it really sturdied things up quite a lot. So that's how I kept the wall from leaning to one side. And like I said, I have to add some more support. So let's go on to the other end of the room here and I'll show you what I did down there. So at the very end of the wall here, you can see I did do something different. And this 2-foot section in here is actually sits lower than the rest of the wall. So it's about 1 foot and maybe 1/4 shorter than the rest of the wall. And the reason being is that is the level that the second level is going to sit at. And I had to make the end part of the wall a little bit shorter just because the track that comes up the grade and ties into the second level, I wasn't going to have a tunnel like I did on the other end of the layout. It's just going to come up through some trees and it's going to be tied into the upper level here. So that's why I did that, and I'll go ahead and I'll show you what I mean by building the grade like a staircase. So you probably guess what I mean by building the grade like a staircase. And if you don't, what I mean by building it like a staircase is there's going to be different steps. They'll kind of look like steps up to the second level. So this piece here, as you can see, is lower than where the tracks will actually tie into the upper level. That's just to give me a little bit more flexibility for when the track has to start the downgrade. And then same with this piece over here. This piece is lower than what it actually has to sit at in order to get the proper grade. And the reason I'm doing that is just to allow me to get some extra ground contours, like maybe the tracks go alongside of a cliff sort of idea. It'll just give me a little more flexibility with what I want to do for scenery, and again, it will give me more flexibility for when I go up and lay the track, just to make sure I get the proper grade. And I will continue building the grade like what you see here. So the next section will be lower than this section, and the section after that will be lower than that section, and eventually tie into the corner all the way down there. So let's move on to the upper level track plan rather, now that I've started to talk about the upper level. So we'll start right here where the grade ties into the upper level loop. There's a switch here, and that just allows me to do continuous loop running on the upper level. But in operation session for say, this switch right here will never be used because the layout's going to be designed to be point to point in operation session. But moving on, as soon as the train gets to the upper level, it'll immediately cross a swing bridge. And then once you get across the swing bridge, the tracks split. One track goes to the intermodal arrival departure tracks, and then the main line just carries on. And I'll get to that in a minute. The intermodal yard is back here. One track is for piggyback and auto racks, and the other two are for the intermodal container cars. This arrival departure track, however, is going to be kind of hidden by trees and a hill, mainly because this main line will parallel a river and kind of wind alongside the river there. But once you get over here, the scenery starts getting a little more mountainous, and I'll show you what I mean in just a second here. So let me reposition the camera. So right here is where the intermodal arrival departure tracks tie back into the main line. And right here, the switch before that is the track where that splits off to go to the coal flood loader, which is over here. And basically, the reason I'm hiding the intermodal arrival departure tracks is because this track here will begin a very small, like 0.5% grade up alongside this cliff here. And this track here will go down about a 1.1% grade to the flood loader. So that will give me, I estimate about 3 inches of difference in the way that the track sits. So that'll allow me to do a little bit of like a hill along the side of track, and there'll be like a tailing pond here and a bunch of mining equipment. So the coal trains will get loaded, and as soon as they get loaded, they will climb a grade again all the way back up to the track level that the main line is running. So I'll move on and I'll show you where that ties into. So the coal loading track ties in right here just before a tunnel, and tunnel there is just to kind of divide the scene a little bit. It'll go through the short little tunnel, and then it'll go into all mountain running scenery. So this will be where the track parallels a cliff on one side and a river on the other side. It'll go across this bridge, which is going to be about 2 feet long almost, and it'll be a big kind of a river gorge valley sort of thing in there. And then it will go between or through a rock cut in here, and then it will begin to round the corner into the town. There's a siding here for a passenger train because there's a station in the town. Being that there is a station on the bottom level in the town, obviously there has to be somewhere where the passenger train goes. So it'll go to the station on the upper level. And now in this town, it's going to be a relatively big town because it's in the cove that I'm standing in front of. There's actually quite a lot of space to fill in there. So just to kind of, I don't know, make it look like it's less space than it actually is, I'm going to probably add a bit of a hill in the back corner, and there's also going to be a brewery that's going to have to be serviced by the railroad, so that'll take box cars, the odd tank car, and hoppers obviously for fermenting the grain. The brewery track ties in here, and then it'll kind of be, this track will be hidden for a bit behind a good section of trees, and it'll come out and it will go across this big long bridge. That's about 2.5 feet or 3 feet long. I can't really remember off the top of my head, but that bridge is going to be modeled after the bridge up in Revelstoke that is just before the Revelstoke Yard on the CP line that runs up through the BC interior. I think that bridge is actually quite a sight to see. It has to cross quite the massive river in order to access the yard. So I felt like modeling that scene because I do quite enjoy looking at that. Or I did enjoy looking at that when I was up there this past summer. And then almost immediately after that bridge comes the yard lead. Just a short little yard lead. I don't really care if I have to bring my trains out onto the main line in order to switch out the yard. Not a big deal to me. The main line continues into an industrial area when I'll reposition the camera so I can give you guys a better look at the yard and industrial area. So just like the bottom level, I went with a diamond shaped yard. If you want a better explanation about a diamond shaped yard, then just go look at my, I think it was 2 layout updates ago now that I explained the bottom level, but basically the yard ladder are flipped on either side of the yard, which makes all the yard tracks the same length rather than a tier styled or pyramid styled yard. So moving on to how I designed this yard here, it's quite a bit smaller than the yard on the bottom level. It only has 3 tracks plus a runaround, and those 3 tracks, the upper level yard won't see a lot of switching and making up trains because these 3 tracks here are going to be primarily used for unit trains such as coal and intermodal. The intermodal trains will get their new cut of cars. They'll stop here for a short bit, run around their train, and then they'll continue to the bottom level again. Right here though is where it gets kind of interesting because these 3 tracks are for the freight trains. Now the freight train will have to come in on this runaround track up here, and it will have to start dividing up its train. So there will be, half the train will be a cut for the ethanol plant, and the other half will be a cut for the paper plant, and there will be a little bit of switching involved in that. So basically, the cut for the ethanol plant will be on one track, the cut for the paper plant will be on the other track, and the two trains that service these industries will come and pick up their cut and start switching. Right here is the paper plant, and the paper plant takes it takes boxcar, tank car, takes wood chip hoppers, and it takes hopper cars. So there is quite a bit of switching to do in this area, being that the box cars will have to go in first here, and then the tank car will have to go here, and so on and so forth. So it'll be quite a neat little switching operation, and it'll be really fun to operate for sure. So I'll go ahead and I'll move to the other side of the yard here. I'll show you what the ethanol plant looks like and the rest of the yard here. So just give me a minute. So at the other end of the yard, there's going to be a small little engine facility here for refueling and any maintenance that has to be done. For instance, if when the unit trains and the freight trains come up, they'll cut their power off the train, get refueled, or if there's any problems with any engines, they will sit to get maintenance. And if it's an actual problem with the locomotive, I'll eventually take it off the layout from there. But behind the engine facility is a small little repair and place track with a little shop. And again, that's for if any cars suffer any damage or broken knuckles. Obviously 3 staging tracks here plus the runaround, and then in between the yard and the industry is a main line. The main line is not going to be used really for any trains that actually in an operation session come up here. I only put that main line in for continuous running when I'm on my own and there's nobody else to run trains here. But basically, once the train from the bottom level reaches the yard, there's no reason that it has to continue on this main line around, because like I said, this is just basically a dead zone. No trains will actually go from here onto this. They'll have to go the opposite way. The only thing that this would be used for is a yard lead for any train that's operating in the yard here, switching out some cars or putting a train together. Beside the main line is a siding. So basically the siding and the main line can be used freely by the switcher that is servicing the industries, because like I said, no trains will be using that main line. So if the train has to set cars out onto the main line in order to perform a switching maneuver or run around its train, then it is free to do so. Beside the siding here is the ethanol plant, and like I said, paper plant's over here. Ethanol plant is just there to vaguely represent an ethanol plant. There's nothing complex about it. There's only 2 tracks here for ethanol tank cars and a track here for covered hoppers for the wheat or grain that gets fermented in the process of making ethanol. So that's pretty much that pretty much wraps up the upper level track plan. If you guys have any ideas or questions about the track plan, feel free to comment below and I'll be happy to answer them. So let's wrap up this update, shall we? Well guys, that's pretty much it for this layout update. Hopefully it wasn't too long, and hopefully you guys stuck through it. So with that, I'd like to thank you for watching, and don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. See you in the next layout update.